Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. This 30-minute podcast features a new author interviewed by me every single day, 365 days a year, for about 30 minutes. I am also the publisher for Zibby Books, which publishes 12 books a year in fiction and memoir. Our books are already out now. You can check it out on zibbybooks.com. And we have a magazine called Zibby Mag, where we have lots of wonderful essays and lifestyle features. That's at zibbymag.com. We have classes at zibbyclasses.com. And I recently opened a bookstore in LA called Zibby's Bookshop at 1113 Montana Avenue at 11th Street in Santa Monica. I hope that you are able to enjoy some of our other offerings. But this here podcast is the basis of all of it and started in 2018. And no matter what I do, this is basically my favorite thing. Enjoy. Maria Hummel is the author of 5 novels, including Still Lives, a Reese's book club pick, and now GOLDENSEAL. Her poetry collection, House and Fire, won the APR Honickman Prize. She lives in Vermont. Welcome, Maria. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss your latest novel, GOLDENSEAL. Welcome.
Thank you. I don't know if you can see can you see my background?
I can see your background.
So that is the Millennium Biltmore's Crystal Ballroom, which was in the scene towards the end of the book where Lacey kind of spins alone under the chandeliers. And I found this is a 1951 photo, but it hasn't changed much, I don't think, over time in terms of the main elements. So I thought it was more interesting than my office, which looks like they get messed right now because we're getting it ready to be the guest bedroom. So.
Well, tell listeners a little bit about your book and why it makes sense that we are looking at a black and white sort of sketch behind you of an old, glamorous hotel ballroom.
Okay. Well, so it starts with an old woman, a stranger, arriving in a sunny metropolis on the West Coast. And she hasn't been there in 4 decades, and everything looks very different to her. And she takes a taxi to the center of the city to meet a friend who is living in a hotel at the center of the city. And her friend is getting ready for this stranger to arrive. And the woman in the taxi is not sure the woman in the hotel is going to let her up to see her. And the woman getting ready isn't sure she wants to see this old friend, but she is going to look as glamorous as possible for her arrival. And the book follows from there, and their conversation when they finally get together, and what it was that drew them together and what tore them apart.
Well, I feel like even though it's based on a scene in a more contemporary world, we're really thrown back again and again to difficult situations in the past, their parents' relationships, like the whole underpinning of who they are as people and how they got to be who they are, both the good and the bad. And I feel like Muddy and Poppy have had such a tough life. I mean, oh my gosh. Yes. That's why when we first got on it leaves me with like a sort of sadness, like a melancholy type feeling, because there are just so many obstacles that when I got to your afterword and it was like, oh, 9/11 and the pandemic and this, that, I was like, okay, so this is the headspace that she was writing in, like I'm kind of understanding. So maybe just back up, sorry for talking so much, back up with where the idea came from and how you ended up going backwards as well as forwards.
Yeah. Well, when we moved to LA, my husband and I in the early 2000s, I got thrown into 2 cultures. One was the museum world. I was working at the Museum of Contemporary Art, and he started working in hotels, the Biltmore and the Bonaventure, and one that was out in the valley. And then we had a friend who worked at the Chateau Marmont. And I just fell in love with the hotel culture in LA. I feel like you might have some scenes in your new book that have LA hotels in them too. I don't know. It's just LA hotels have a special character to them. And so I knew I especially loved the Biltmore, and that kind of knowledge of that world combined with a book that I read that came out in American translation in 2001 called Embers by a Hungarian author named Sándor Moroy, which was originally published in 1942, is a story about two old friends, males, an old general and his soldier, meeting in a castle in the Carpathians for the first time in 40 years. And they're also weighing out friendship. But when I read that book, I thought, this is such a great treatise on friendship, but it's about male friendship, and the female friendship is different. And wouldn't it be great to use this structure, but set it in an American castle? And well, there it is. So, and then the third piece was, as we all experienced, we lived like recluses in the, particularly for me, the academic year that was 2021. And I thought, I know how to write this character now, this person who's basically a hermit who lives in the hotel and never goes out and is locked in her tower.
Well, there were some scenes. Can I read this one passage? Is that okay? Yeah. Which I found particularly poignant about what it's like sort of growing older and being sort of lonely at the same time. I know this is Lacey talking. I know myself and I am old and I have few choices left. One of them is to fear death. All my life I have feared it, that healthy fear everyone has, that death would steal something from me, my remaining years, my golden days. But I no longer need golden days. Tomorrow will be the same as this day and the day before that, and I could live them or I could let them go. You see, it's quite extraordinary what happens to you when you live alone for a long time, with only your thoughts for company. A double self grows, a mirror self, the one who lives and the one who watches her live. And the second self begins to understand that the first is terribly ordinary, has always been, even if she was once beautiful and happy. The second self says, don't be afraid of death or the truth. They have been waiting for you all along.
Oh, thanks for reading that.
Oh my gosh.
That was definitely a lesson of the pandemic, that second self. I feel like a lot of us went through that. And that definitely came out of that experience, I think, for me.
I mean, the idea that life is just every day on repeat, like a Groundhog Day type of existence. And it almost doesn't even matter if you live another day. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's like depression personified in a way, or just, reality. Like, what is life? I don't know. It's just, maybe I'm just feeling in a mood today.
Well, and she's trying to prove to her friend too that she doesn't, that she's steelier than her and she doesn't care. You know what I mean? So there is that too. There's a little bit of posing in it, I think.
Okay. Well, that's good. And you also talk about experience, Poppy and Muddy, who I mentioned earlier, if I'm pronouncing it even right, but how they were at Theresienstadt and Bergen-Belsen and all of the camps, and how then you said Muddy and Poppy came home inseparable for the rest of their lives, but they never left again.
Yeah.
Also so heavy in a book that it's not designed to feel heavy. It's like a reflection. Did you design it to feel heavy? Like, are you surprised how I'm feeling, or am I misinterpreting? Do you know what I mean?
I think there is a tragic layer to the book that I actually had to pull back a little bit. I think as a writer, it was originally I had written a more tragic ending, and then nobody liked it.
Oh no!
So I think, I think the people of Mutti and Poppy's generation went through a whole lot, and those two, they were from Prague, a Prague that no longer, the World War II just decimated, that crossroads of Jewish and German and Czech culture, and the sophistication and the incredible art that came out of that period. And it got destroyed for Mutti first because she was Jewish, but the Germans were expelled by the Czechs very forcibly after the war too. And, they were enemies. Not going to say that, but as a people, they didn't deserve retribution in ways that, or at least I can understand the feelings behind that longing for retribution. But those were people who were very devoted to their city and to the culture that they had lived in. And then suddenly they were, you don't belong here either, you're gone. And so I thought that was interesting that the Germans got sent to the same place that the Jews had gotten sent to, which was Theresienstadt. Mm-hmm. And, and then the Russians rolled in. So Czechs didn't have it easy either.
My gosh, just couldn't win there.
No, basically Eastern Europe. It's a hard place, but.
Do you have a connection to Prague yourself or this time, or are you just interested from a historical perspective? Or
I was so lucky. I got to do my study in Prague about 2 years after the wall came down. It was three, I guess. And it was so amazing because it was a city, kind of communism had really preserved its outline since World War II. And there was such an incredible flowering of Czech culture, under communism. And I've absolutely fell in love with the city and thought, one day I got to put something here. So those passages were easy to write, the Prague scenes, because I just had them in my memory from wandering around Prague. But I just also loved what a crossroads culture it was. And I don't think often it's recognized what an incredible melting pot Prague was for early 20th century literature and art and everything.
I went to Prague once, but it was probably in 2002. But I've always been so fascinated by the culture there as well. Like, sort of mysterious.
Yeah. And they've produced so much great work. It's phenomenal.
So, okay, sorry for cutting you off, but I feel like I don't have a good sense of you as a person. So, like, where did you grow up? Like, who are you? How did you become a writer?
Yeah.
I know where you live now,
Sure.
But give me like the background of, and I know you became a Reese's Book Club pick, which is amazing. What's the backstory here?
Well, I'm back in my home state. I grew up in Vermont. I should also say I'm the daughter of a German. My father emigrated in the 60s, and my mother's family has been in the US for a really long time. And so I did also spend quite a bit of time going over to Europe as a kid. So that also, I think, seeded some of the things that I've written about. But so I grew up in Vermont. I bounced around a lot of different places, went to grad school in North Carolina, UNC Greensboro for my MFA, then moved out to LA and worked in the art museum. And then I got a Stegner Fellowship to Stanford and spent a long time at Stanford, I think 11 years, both as a fellow and then as a lecturer there. And then I got a tenure track job at UVM at University of Vermont and wanted to come back east because all of our family was on the East Coast. So we came back here and Vermont was a great place to spend the pandemic. It was an easier place, I think, to get outside and low population density. So I've been feeling lucky, although I do miss California too. And I've loved Santa Monica. I know you have a bookstore there. My brother lived there for a long time, so spent a lot of time there.
Oh, yes. I love it out there. Wish I were there today.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Sirens.
No benefits.
Oh, that's awesome. And what was the experience like of becoming a Reese's Book Club pick?
I got hives.
Did you?
Well, okay. So I don't know if they still work the system this way, but they told us about a month and a half in advance. And at that time, it was a kind of a rollout thing where they would do like a video where you'd give clues to whoever was the person before you would give clues to your book, and people would, on Instagram, if they guessed it right, they were entered into a drawing. And so there was very strict warnings that you could not let this information out of the bag in any way, or the honor could be rescinded. So, my editor threw his back out and I got hives, I think, trying to keep a lid on it. And then I think some London tabloid saw pictures of her holding the book and they were like, is this the next Reese Witherspoon book club pick and stuff? But anyway, it was what a terrific experience being connected with those folks. They do such great things for women authors, women readers in general. And I felt so fortunate to be kind of inducted into that family because it really is. It's been such an honor and kind of revelation to see how much they've been able to do as a book club.
That's amazing. So. Wow, what a story.
Yeah.
Do you have an old girlfriend from camp or someone you met?
Oh, I was thinking about that question and how to respond to that if people ask. Most of the time when I write fiction, my characters are composite characters, with the exception of a few, usually secondary characters that I might be drawing from life. So Lacey and Edith, I mean, honestly, those two characters, I don't like, it always seems corny when writers start talking about their characters like they're their own people, but in as much as any characters I've ever written are their own people, these two are. I mean, I would send them on book tour instead of me and have them say art remarks about people and or whatever, because they just, once I started writing them, they just kept talking, and I was as a writer, and that's never happened to me before. But they are not, I think they're more like anime in a way, than they are actual, modeled on actual people. It's like deep from my subconscious.
I always wonder if those are actually real people somewhere, or like
yeah
to be people, or I don't know. I hear this so often. People are like, this sounds crazy, but my characters talk to me, which I totally get. So
yeah.
And you wrote it in 6 weeks, right? The first draft. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was unbelievable experience. I don't know. When I look back, I don't really know how it happened, but I just would be, I have 2 kids, and it was lockdown. So it was I started right after school ended, like literally the day or two after my UVM semester ended. But, I'd go from parental stuff and then like go upstairs and just keep writing. And then I was really living in the world of the novel the whole time I was writing it. Wow. I don't really know what I cooked or anything else, but
wow. And you don't pronounce it. What was the old-fashioned way? It wasn't Lacey. There was some other.
Lucia.
Oh, Lucia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lucia Weber. Yeah, that would be the like.
I was like trying to say it out loud the way you wrote it. And I was like, how am I saying this?
Yeah, I know. Maybe my phonetics aren't so good.
No, it's fine. I didn't know that was a name the way that it's pronounced. Well, are you writing anything else, or have any other characters taken up residence in your brain lately?
I have, in a different way, but I got really into researching into the life of one of the Grimm's fairy tale oral.
Yeah, you mentioned that whole thing.
Yes, so the one I mentioned in the afterword, Dorothea Wieman, she is now occupying a presence as the heart of a novel that I'm writing. I learned more about her. She was the daughter of an innkeeper and the wife to a tailor, had 7 kids. She doesn't tell the Grimms the stories till the end of her life. But in the record, she disappears and her husband disappears for 9 years. Like there's birth, then gap, and then more births. And so I was like, okay, there it is. I can write into this. Like what happens in those 9 years, and it's a love story. I think a story of a long marriage. And it's also a story, all the tales that she tells are kind of wound through it in like more like as if things from life inspired them. So
awesome. Well, what advice would you have for aspiring authors?
Oh, I read a really good one once, which was like the first 7 years are the worst. It's kind of cynical. I would say the thing that I tell most aspiring writers is make allies, make friends, find people around you who also really care about writing. And if you find them, hold on to them, because the farther you go at any time in your writing career, but it never ends that you need those people. It never ends that you need advocates, or that you need readers, or that you need just somebody who understands. And so sometimes people can get sort of pitted against each other when they're younger, thinking like if, it's a competition of who's going to make it kind of thing. And honestly, the writers I know who are happiest are ones who have really nourished their networks and have people that they regard very highly and regard them highly and work together to achieve a common goal, which is really to just keep literature in the world, like you. I mean, you're doing a lot, obviously, and that it's people like me are really grateful for that ambassadorship you do between writers and readers.
I like that. Ambassadorship. Maybe I'll steal that. Thank you for that. That's great advice. Nourish your network. I like it. Sounds like a whole article. You should write it if you haven't already.
Maybe.
Anyway, Maria, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for GOLDENSEAL and for the time spent with these two lovely ladies. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, and have a great afternoon. And I love that I've been watching the very sleeping positions of your dogs.
Yeah. Lovely. Sorry about that. Anyway.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.